Hello class. Today we are talking about credibility math and specifically about your science paper and how to determine what research you're reading is believable versus not believable. And so first of all, I want you to think about being like in 7th grade. Right, so there you are, you're in 7th grade, and you hear that these two girls are in the lunchroom and there was a really big fist fight, and one girl punched the other girl, and it was a whole thing. There was hair flying and nails flying and craziness. Right, so you hear the story. Right, what do you do? Right, do you just be like shrug and move on? Do you believe it at face value? Do you question who's telling it? Do you go and look for yourself? I mean, what do you do to determine if something actually happened? Right, and the same sort of sleuthing skills that you should have learned in 7th grade are the same skills that you should be using to determine when you're reading sources whether or not something is believable, right? Whether or not it is credible. So, to determine a source's credibility, right, you want to look at it, is it relevant? All right, so for example, right now we're all learning about COVID and we're scrolling through our Facebook feeds and there's constant updates and there's kinds of things. So the first thing, is it relevant? Is this information about the thing you're talking about? Right? So if we're talking about COVID, then is the source about COVID, or is the source about complaining about, Trump's lack of doing something about that? It's COVID related, but it's not really relevant to your individual life of has COVID gotten to Howell County yet? Right? Reliable. You want to think about the source. Is this a source that you usually get the same information, you get good information from? And do you get the same information from it, good information from it every single time? Or sort of sometimes you get good information, sometimes maybe not so much. Sort of like that friend you have who's a little bit of an unreliable narrator, who maybe will tell the story, but tells it in such a way that, it's not really true. It's like tells it slant. Your friend is Obi-Wan Kenobiing the truth a little bit, right? Accurate. That sort of goes back to the reliable. Is it, it doesn't do the same thing every single time. But also accurate, is it absolutely true every single time? All right? Or, is the source a little bit, mostly it gets it right, occasionally doesn't. Right? Accuracy is about being correct. Right? Timely. Right? If you're looking at information about COVID from 2 weeks ago, dude, your information is out of date. Right? If you're looking at COVID stuff, you want to know, as of this date today, how many cases are in Howell County? How many people have been tested in Howell County? How many people are going to have tested positive? How many people have tested negative? How many tests are pending? Right? You want to know about what's going on right now. Who cares about 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago was a completely different landscape. Right? So your timeliness is important. Unbiased. Right? So a lot of news is biased. Right? A lot of information is biased, and that's not unconstitutional, unfortunate. It used to be that you actually weren't allowed as a news organization to tell something that wasn't necessarily true or that was unbiased. And then in 1980, 1982, somewhere in there, there was a law passed that said, news organizations, they could tell the truth the way they see it. And that changes sort of the scope of whether or not something is biased or not. Right? And with the assumption that everything is a little bit biased. And so what you try to do is you try to determine if something is relevant and reliable and timely and accurate and unbiased. Generally, that information is credible, right? And sort of the same thing, if you start seeing the same sort of information from a variety of sources, that's another way to know that something is credible, right? Like, for example, on Facebook, I follow the AP, Reuters, Washington Post, New York Times, Real News, something else, somebody else I follow on Facebook to get my new, Al Jazeera. I get it from a whole bunch of different points of view. BBC is a good one, so that I get a sense of the same news from a variety of perspectives, right? And so if you're getting the same information from a variety of places, right, and they aren't copy and pasting each other, obviously, then that also helps to determine a source's credibility, right? So going back to the girls in the fist fight in the lunchroom, right, then if you hear the same story over and over and over, right, that's one thing. If you go and talk to one of the girls who was actually in the fight, she's going to tell you a slightly different point of view, but she was literally right there. She knows, right? She was involved, right? And so you need to sort of keep that in mind too, for your paper and your topic. All right, another way to find sources to determine if the information is relevant, reliable, accurate, timely, and unbiased is to start with sources that have already been vetted for you, right? Why do a lot of extra work if you can avoid it, right? And so I'm going to introduce you to the libraries at Missouri State, which you should have already seen. You should have gone through an IDS class. They should have walked you through this. But here we are, libraries.missouristate.edu. And if you go to the articles and databases, I love the articles and databases because I try to never have to read books for work, because that's a lot harder. And if you can find articles about it, it's shorter and therefore easier, and you can get more sources. So I like Academic Search Complete as a database because it's very generalized and it pulls from a lot of different sources. All right, so while you're here, you should see it's got full text and scholarly. And if you choose those two things, they will help you a lot. Scholarly is peer-reviewed. That means they've already done a lot of the work already to make sure that whatever is published is credible. All right, and so that makes it a good source right at the beginning. They've already done most of your work for you. All right, you limit to full text because that way you're finding the sources that have everything you want to look at, not just the abstract. There is nothing quite so frustrating as getting a summary of a source and not being able to read the whole source and having to chase it down. That is frustrating, and it's just better to actually never even know that that source is out there, that it's going to frustrate you. Just limit it to full text right away. All right, now my example that I gave you was about Lise Meitner. So, look, there she is, Lise Meitner. Comes right up. So I do this, I search this, and you'll see I've got 230 possible sources, which is relatively small, actually. All right, so I look here, Lise Meitner Maneuver Center. Okay, don't care about that. We tell the story of her, of the center. Okay. Lise Meitner and the Dawn of the Nuclear Age. That looks like it might be a good source. So I'm going to click here where it says PDF full text. What I like about a PDF is that it gives me exactly the source, as if I had taken it off the shelf, put it on the computer printer scanner thing, and made copies. Right, and that's what I like about that. It gives you page numbers. It gives you all your publishing information. Very handy stuff. All right, so I'm looking at this review essay. So Patricia Reif, Lise Meitner, and the Dawn. Right, so this is a book that Patricia Reif wrote. All right, and this Gary Goldstein guy is reviewing this book. So it might be a good source. It gives me an idea of whether or not to read this book. You know, and it gives me some information about Lise Meitner, so it might not be a bad source. Definitely would give me an overview of the life, and so that might be something I would use for my paper. All right, so we could go down. Something in German. This present contribution contains previously unpublished letters by Clara Haber's contemporaries. Written within 2.8. Okay, tragic suicide. Don't care about that. Lise Meitner and Niels Bohr, a historical note. Ah, okay. So that might be interesting because, as we know, Lise Meitner, contributed to a bunch of things and then got shafted. So again, PDF full text. Letter to the editor. All right, and so this is a letter to the editor. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so you could use this as a source. Or I could use this as a source. All right. The trick with doing research largely is that it is a numbers game, right? You will read way a lot more that you will actually ever be able to use, and that's just part of the game. It's a little bit like doing a choose your own adventure book, where you're reading about You Are the Life of a Shark. All right, do you bite the scuba diver or do you turn away? If you want to bite the scuba diver, go to page 6. If you turn away, go to page 17. And then you go to page 6, because of course you want to bite the scuba diver if you're a shark, right? And then, in the story, then the scuba diver stabs you in the nose and you die. And then you go back to page 17 and go to the alternate ending, right? Research is like that, right? It's forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. It's like learning how to drive and turning in a really tight radius. All right, so you just keep going through and you find sources that look like they are about what you are interested in. I encourage you strongly to print them off. Kill some trees. I really believe in killing trees for a bunch of reasons, but the biggest one is so that you can write on it, and also so that you always have the source forever and ever and ever. Hallelujah. There is nothing quite so frustrating as finding a good source and then losing the link and not being able to get it back. All right, kill trees. All right, that being said, that's pretty much what I just sort of want to show you in the library. You know how to get books. If you really want to, I would encourage you at this point not to. Find some good sources and start assembling your literature review. Thanks, and I'll see you later.